Welcome to the World of Horror podcast with Mom and Mac. This is the podcast where we share our love of international horror. Everyone has their fears, but we are not afraid of subtitles. Before we get into it, fair warning, these discussions will include spoilers and language which may not be suitable for all listeners. Let's move on to our first segment, Mom and Mac Chat. Hi Mac, how's it going?
Hi, Mom. It's going well. Honestly, today was kind of boring. Just a normal work day. But I was excited to be able to talk to you and also excited to watch this movie because I hadn't watched it since the first time and I had a completely different experience watching it. It made me cry this time.
You haven't watched it since the first time you watched it?
Yeah, which was like in 2006, I think.
Oh my gosh. Well, you have changed quite a bit since then.
This is true. I remembered only like snapshots of the movie. And then there were times where a part would happen in the movie and I'd be like, oh, okay, this is like clicking in my memory. But I remember, it's kind of interesting. The Mac, the baby Mac that watched it, it was a different movie that I watched, you know, saying it was felt like a different movie. I felt like that I don't know how to put it. I was kind of in the fantasy world that Ophelia was in when I thought it was that. I thought it was all that. But then when I watched it again, it felt a lot more real.
Well, okay, let's do the math here for a second. I mean, 18.
I was 10.
You were 10? Okay.
No, but I'm saying, isn't that interesting? Like,
yeah.
I feel like the fantasy stuff really stuck with me, but this time, all of it, I was seeing all of the themes, and that made me cry.
Well, I think that makes a whole lot of sense, given how old you were when you first saw it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, I've seen it a bunch. No, it's cool when you go back and you see a movie, especially one that I think you saw as a kid. And then when you see it as an adult, you know, it probably hits really different. The only thing I can really compare it to is there's a movie called Time Bandits that I saw. Well, I was probably in middle school and as an adult, but it hit me a lot harder as a kid because it's really bleak. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's got a lot of fantasy elements in it. It's with the little people, and this little boy, Kevin, goes on this like adventure through time with them. But it doesn't end well. Oh. And this kind of in a way. It's a pretty bleak story. And it hit me really hard as a kid. But then watching it as an adult, you know, you've seen so many these patterns over and over again, so you kind of know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so doesn't hit those emotional places as hard, maybe.
I don't know if I had anything that as a kid I thought was darker than as an adult. I feel like it's the opposite. Like I was telling Alan about my different experience watching Pan's Labyrinth this time, and I told him it reminded me of when you and I first watched Grave of the Fireflies together. And I was like, why is Mom crying so much? And then you watch it as an adult and it's like, saddest thing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
But as a kid, you're just like, or that's how I felt, of just like, oh, this means nothing to me. Or like, I thought it was a good movie. It made me think a lot about war, but the emotional points did not stick as hard.
Yeah, that really messed me up. I don't know why, what was going on in my life at that moment. It's hard.
Talk about bleak movies.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. But I mean, you can, you know, they're dead. I mean, at the beginning, I don't know why. It's
still horrible.
Yeah, but I remember at the time you were kind of like WTF, and I was like, well, these aren't real people, but real people died. Lots of them died, and yeah, just the reverberations of that were very intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a movie, if it's something about a lot of people dying, it's like when you hear about it, the amount of people becomes so abstract, and then you watch something like that and you're like, that's one life, you know, right. Like that was a whole life and a whole story. And then like compounding that, times however many, it's like overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I wanted to do something slightly different. I think I started watching this like 3 times. I don't know. I'm just going to try to accept my brain the way it is. I mean, there's not a lot I can do about it. But I sometimes get like really fixated on things, and I wanted to get the summary correct. And that's what was kind of tripping me up. And there's so much in this film. It's impossible to talk about it. We could just talk about the dialogue, or we could talk about the poetry of the dialogue, or we could talk about the cinematography. And so what I did is I just gave up, and I found a blog that summarizes the film. And so I want to look at that blog instead of my notes. But
Okay.
I have to go back to the stats. Okay, here we go. Pan's Labyrinth / El Labirinto del Fauno. The summary is, in the Falangist Spain of 1944, a bookish young stepdaughter of a sadistic army officer escapes into an eerie but captivating fantasy world. This was written and directed by Guillermo del Toro, starring Sergi Lopez, Maribel Verdú, Ivana Baquero, Doug Jones, Ariadna Gil, Alex Angulo from El Dia de la Bestia, which was episode 7 of World of Horror podcast.
Aww.
And it's narrated by Pablo Adan. Cinematography is by Guillermo Navarro, edited by Bernat Villaplana, music by Javier Navarrete. The release dates are the 27th of May, 2006 at Cannes, and the 11th of October, 2006 in Spain. It has a running time of 120 minutes. How did you feel about this runtime, Mac?
I gotta say, if you're gonna have a long movie, you better make every bit of it entertaining, and that is what Pan's Labyrinth did. So in this case, it gets the max seal of approval. No, I feel like no time is wasted.
Yeah.
In this movie, and like you said, like there's a lot that happens. When I was even just trying to, because Alan's never watched it, I tried to describe it to him, and I was like, "Oh, well, we'll be here all day. I can't talk about it, But that's because it's so rich, So, yeah, this is one of the few movies where I'm like, no, you know what? This deserves to be 2 hours long.
Okay, so this is from a blog called The Other Folk, and I'm not sure who wrote this, but all 3 people are credited, and they are Eric Botts, Meg Sipos, and Tim Barditis. And so, thanks, Eric, Meg, and Tim, for this. And I recommend this blog. It's got a lot of really good stuff about folk horror, and yeah, great. So, The Trials of Ophelia, 1944. 5 years after the Spanish Civil War, Ophelia, Ivana Baquero, travels with her pregnant mother Carmen, Ariadna Gil, to live with her new stepfather, the ruthless caricature of toxic masculinity, Captain Fidel Sergi Lopez.
Okay, I gotta say, I literally wrote down at one point, why did they have to cast such a hot guy to play Vidal?
To play the captain?
Yes, because there's so many scenes where he looks so rugged and manly that I was like, I caught myself being like, ooh, and I was like, wait a second, this is a deplorable man. But they really like had him looking good in this movie.
Yeah, he's a handsome fellow.
Every outfit he has on, like showing off his like manly chest hair, like I was just like, man, if only I get why the mom, maybe why she was charmed by him.
While exploring the grounds of the old mill-turned-military site, she discovers an ancient labyrinth, and within it, a faun, Doug Jones, voiced by Pablo Adan.
I think this movie's use of CGI is so amazing. It looks so much better than movies made now, because that little bug that she thinks is a fairy, is
Yes.
all CGI, but it looks amazing. Like, you know, it's CGI, but it doesn't take away from it at all. And then some of the fawns, I think his ears are CGI, but the prosthetics look so good that you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it enhances, they use CGI in the way it's meant to be used, which is enhancing real life. And I just was wowed. I was like, this does not look dated or aged in any way. If this came out now, I'd be like, oh wow, that looks amazing.
Okay, I want to push back just a little bit because I
Okay.
agree completely. But the toad part.
Okay. He was a little bit, you could, but I feel like it was in the same way of like Nightmare on Elm Street, where you could see, like, it doesn't look perfect, but I see the intent and
Mhm.
I don't mind it.
Yeah,
It doesn't
I'm
look
with
like,
you.
oh, I can't tell this from real life. Like, you know, it's CGI, but I feel like the background was so good, and I didn't want bugs to be crawling over that child, so I was okay with it. Like, I didn't want real bugs to be on her.
We've never watched Something Wicked This Way Comes, have we?
I don't think so.
Okay. I want to watch that with you sometime. The special effects are terrible, but it's the kind of thing where it's a very old movie, but it's the kind of thing where it's like if you were watching a play, you know?
Exactly. It's like, I feel like when you see the passion behind something and the intent, and it doesn't look like they just skimped out, I can forgive it.
Yeah. So she meets this fawn and she's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, it had so many names." The narrative voice is just gorgeous.
Yes.
I guess Doug Jones learned Spanish like phonetically, so he could speak his lines. But then they like use this other actor, and his voice is like butter. It's
It's
just like
so
so
nice.
nice. But he's like, only the wind and the trees know my true name, or something like that. Like the
Oh.
poetry is just really, really nice. He believes that she carries the soul of Moana, the underworld princess who came to the mortal world where the sun's brightness blinded her and erased her memory. The fawn says she can reclaim her throne if she completes 3 tasks to prove her essence is untainted by her mortal lives. Ophelia's quest begins amid her mother's imperiled pregnancy and Captain Vidal's reign of terror.
I thought that it was so smart the way that you have this intro where the mom tells Ophelia, make sure you call the captain father, and she doesn't want to. And then you have this whole storyline of, oh, her true father, you know, is the king of the underworld. And then, you know, her mortal father has already passed away. I just thought that was so smart. Like,
Yeah.
you already introduced this theme of like not knowing where you came from and having to pretend that you're somebody that you're not.
And I like it too that she's like, she, at every opportunity, she's like, he's not my father.
She tells Mercedes, like, she says like 3 times, like, well, he's not my dad. My dad was a tailor, and that's not my dad. And she says, I think you've made that clear enough.
Yeah.
That was
But
so funny.
I think that's kind of great. It was kind of like when we're talking about, oh, well, I guess this will probably go before the men episode, but
Mm.
the voice of the protagonist in both of them is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was a kind of a nice connection between the two films.
I think Ophelia is a great child character. I think she's very innocent, but she, I don't know, kind of like what you just said, like she has a need to make sure that her intentions are known. And I think like the the truth really matters to her.
Yes.
And I just think that is such a true thing of children, of they don't see the necessity for trying to put on like a pretense. Like that doesn't mean anything to them.
Yeah, and along with like make sure you call him father. There's the dress,
Yes.
and you know make sure you don't get your shoes dirty and all that kind of stuff. But we'll get to that. That's kind of where we are. Ophelia's first task is to retrieve a key from the belly of a massive toad, which coincides with Vidal's dinner party. As such, Ophelia is expected to wear a beautiful green dress her mother has made, one that quietly recalls Alice's dress in Disney's Alice in Wonderland from 1951.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
She does look so cute. And I love this scene because all of the women working there, like when they see her, they're all just like elated. And again, this is something I feel like I understand more as an adult of like, you're probably stressed out all the time working for this dude. Just seeing like this adorable child would just brighten your day.
But I thought you were going to go with like when people make a fuss over you, how that's really stressful.
Oh, that too. Like, but I feel like maybe I identified more with her as a kid, and I still understand that feeling. Like, it makes sense why none of this really means as much to her. Like, putting on that fancy dress is kind of like her mom saying, like, "Oh, I would have loved to have a dress like this when I was a kid."
Yeah.
Like, that means nothing to her because it's just like, well, I don't want to wear this. I don't care. But just the disconnect in worlds between her and the rest of the adults, I feel like it's so subtly portrayed. They don't tell you it, they just show you.
Yeah. Also, like the night before, her mom's like, "I've got a big surprise for you tomorrow." And Ophelia's like, "Is it a book?" And, that's what she really wants. Before setting off for the Toad, Ophelia confides in Mercedes and asks whether she believes in fairies, to which the housekeeper replies, "No, but when I was little I did. I believed in a lot of things I don't believe anymore." Mercedes' answer contrasts with Carmen's and Vidal's demand that Ophelia put aside childish fantasies. Instead, Mercedes offers soft reassurance. Even if she doesn't believe in fairies, she doesn't shame Ophelia. This statement also rings of faltered idealism under Franco's dictatorship. That honesty earns Ophelia's trust. She shares what happened the night before, and Mercedes listens, validating Ophelia's experiences, even if she thinks they're fantasies. Ophelia's and Mercedes' conflicts mirror each other, as both believe in an ideal threatened by the same authority, Captain Vidal. They must perform complacent roles for the captain as daughter and housekeeper, forced to hide themselves and act in secret. There is a bit about reading from the book of Crossroads. I kind of love this. She's in her sort of Alice in Wonderland dress, and she's walking and reading at the same time about the toad. And then we see the gnarled tree that kind of looks like the fawn's head, and it also looks like fallopian tubes. Did you get
definitely.
That? Yeah.
I mean, it definitely looked like some sort of like, what's the opposite of phallic?
Yonic,
yeah. Like even like the opening,
Yep.
Like she's entering a different world.
All right, so the tree is dying because this toad is like sitting on like the root system or something like that. So she notices her shoes are already caked in mud, and Ophelia takes off her dress. She just like kind of lays it on a branch, which is a very sweet and naive and stupid thing to do, but it makes sense as a child that she would do that. Her crawl through the tree is interspersed with scenes of Vidal tightening his grip on the land. He and his men pursue a rebel camp after noticing a trail of smoke in the surrounding forest. By the time they arrive, the rebels have fled, but they've left supplies, including a vial of stolen antibiotics. Vidal yells, "You left this behind, and your lottery ticket. Why don't you come back to get it? Who knows? This could be your lucky day." He seems disappointed when the rebels refuse to engage. Meanwhile, as Ophelia pleads with the toad to give up the land, the creature belches over her. She urges him to change, to recognize the harm he's wrought, but the toad, like Vidal, is unmoved, consumed by mortal dominion. Ophelia must get the toad to eat 3 magic stones and take the golden key from inside its belly. Only then will the fig tree flourish again. And she's successful because she like holds out this little pill bug, and he's like, "I want that bug." This nasty tongue comes out. And I think this is kind of cool about like fairy tales and the trials that the hero has to undergo. Usually, they do involve something that's disgusting.
Yeah.
And this certainly qualifies.
Yeah. And I don't know, in doing this, she has to completely go against every expectation of the mortal world that she's in. Like, she's making a choice to, I mean, she doesn't want to, but she dirties the dress and her shoes. Like, she's completely going against everything that's been asked of her in order to do this trial.
Yes. Ophelia emerges from the tree, covered in mud and slime, victorious, but exhausted. This first challenge was harder and more traumatizing than she'd imagined. Her victory is further stained when she discovers her dress dislodged from the branches, muddied and ruined. Her first step back to life as Princess Moana comes with the price of missing dinner, destroying the handmade dress, and the shame of disappointing her mother. But the mother says, and your father too. And Ophelia's like, oh, you mean the captain? And she's like, yes, you've disappointed him more than you've disappointed me. And Ophelia smiles.
Like, yes.
Yes. But in the process, she has discovered strength, resilience, and wit, and she's learned monsters cannot be reasoned with. The Pale Man. For her second task, Ophelia must overcome impulse and desire. She fails, but manages to escape horrific consequences by her bravery and ingenuity. In the build-up to the film's most famous scene, we get a parallel scene in the real world, quote unquote. Vidal and a group of men and their wives this is a hard scene. The dinner scene. All instrumental or complicit in Francoist oppression, discuss severely cutting families' rations while they indulge in a gluttonous feast. To justify their greed, a Catholic priest proclaims, God has already saved their souls. What happens to their bodies? Well, it hardly matters to him.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I don't know. I understand that the mom her hope was, I've lost my husband. I'm a woman during this time where women don't have any like rights. Maybe this will grant me and my daughter a better life, but she could not have picked a worse guy to do, to try that with. Cause I don't know. I just would feel disgusting. Like being around this man.
In a nightmarish caricature of this dinner, having received magical chalk from the faun to draw a door in her bedroom, Ophelia enters the Pale Man's banquet hall. The camera scans past a pile of small shoes in the background, those of the Pale Man's child victims.
And all of the art on the wall, that really got me. Like, it's drawn so well, like so stylistically, and it's like, those old pictures, of like when you learn about people doing like sacrifices and stuff, it's like that same kind of vibe. And it's just him killing children and eating them.
And he's asleep at the head of the table. And so there's just all these parallels, back to the dinner party. And at the dinner party, he humiliates his wife in such a weird way. Like there are these ladies and they're like, how did you two meet? Kind of thing, like it's a normal question.
Yeah.
And so the wife is explaining how they met and like reaching out for her husband's hand. And he's just kind of like, he rejects it. And then he's like, my wife doesn't understand how the world works.
He's like, nobody cares about her silly stories. Like, Jesus Christ, this woman's like dying pregnant with your son.
Which he has forced, he's kind of hastened that because he needs his son. He's convinced it's a son. I love the doctor's like, why do you think that? And he's like, don't fuck with me. That's the translation. Yes. But he's like, a son has to be born where his father is. What
world are you living in?
Yeah. But she's like very pregnant and she shouldn't have been traveling at that stage in her pregnancy, I guess. But he doesn't care really because she's just a vessel. Oh yeah. There was one thing, I think it's in the trivia, but it showed up twice in different things that I read about the movie. So when the mother and daughter come, he says, bienvenidos. And he probably should have said bienvenidas because they're women, they're female.
But he only cares about the baby.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's so subtle but good.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the scene with the Pale Man.
Yes.
Okay, I imagine this was quite different for you. This time you were pretty freaked out the first time.
I mean, it's pretty scary. He's pretty like scary in every single way, like his body, his face, his weird eye hands, like the fact that he kills and eats children.
Yeah, so she has to retrieve this dagger, the sacred dagger. That's like the task, but she's told to eat absolutely nothing from the table. And he's asleep when she enters. And remember, she had to go to bed without supper the night before. But there's some debate. I read a lot actually on Reddit about like her motivations here. But
that's the one sticking point I had. I feel like this, and it's not even that I'm mad that she took a grape because but I feel like the movie could have done a little bit to enforce, because I was like, well, I guess it's because she didn't eat the night before, but they should have done just one little scene of her being really hungry or something like that. But we have none of that. And then it's just immediately like, and all of the fairies are in her face like, girl, don't do it,
Right.
And to me, it only makes sense for the story that she takes it. But I feel like it could have been, it's the one thing that I thought was not good.
Yeah, the other side of that is she's so familiar with fairy tales that she knows that she has to violate the directive. But
it's not shown to us, though.
No, it's really not. I mean, so of course she's told not to eat anything, and she does eat the grapes, which are very similar to the eyeballs.
Yeah, that she picked the grapes was so funny.
Yeah, so he puts the eyeballs in the palms of his hands, and then in that iconic shot, he puts the hands up to his face so he can see her, and then he chases her in this really scary, like I don't know how to describe it. He's leaning forward, kind of like lurching after her.
He's kind of like an old man, a little bit. Like, I mean, his skin's saggy and he's really frail looking, so it is kind of like old creepy man also. Old creepy man monster, which, is pretty freaky. But yeah, I just wish we could have gotten, or if they could have shown us that there was something kind of supernatural about the food that just put her under a thrall, because I would have accepted that. But the way that the scene plays out, it really is that she's about to leave, looks at a grape, fairies are like, girl, don't do it. She swats like 3 of them away and then eats a grape.
And that also kind of doesn't make sense, because she's been like, she's been following the fairies. Yeah, so it's a little bit, tough. But anyway, we get Mercedes and Dr. Ferrero's stealing of the supplies and the medicines, which is paralleled with Ophelia's theft, and the rebels' assault on Vidal's base as they steal weapons and supplies, and finally Captain Vidal's discovery of the stolen storage key. Like the Pale Man's awakening on finding the key, Vidal begins to see the rebel collaborators right in front of him, and just as the Pale Man eats 2 of the fairies, Vidal kills one of the rebels himself before capturing and torturing another. Despite the tragedies that result from the rebels' assault, their success is instrumental in the final defeat of Vidal, just as Ophelia's partial triumph over the Pale Man is instrumental in her return to the underworld. Both are tainted victories, and the Faun is outraged at Ophelia's disobedience, her giving into mortal temptation. But her trials are not about perfection, they're about goodness, wisdom, and transcendence beyond the wicked mortal world. Ophelia is mortified at the horror she's caused. But the same penchant for disobedience that allowed her to eat the grapes also led her to the correct cabinet. Yeah, the cabinet was kind of interesting too, right? Because the fairies are directing her to one cabinet and she moves to the far left one.
Mm-hmm.
All virtues that might save us, it would seem, come with vices that might destroy us. I like that line a lot.
Yeah.
So in order for her to succeed, she just has to be herself, and she's a flawed person.
Yeah.
How beautiful is that? The final test demands sacrifice, and Ophelia must overcome the voice of authority as it tells her to commit a terrible act. Abandoned by the fawn for her disobedience, the world around her unravels. The mandrake root under her mother's bed stops moving, and when Vidal discovers it, he rages over Ophelia's absurd fantasies. Carmen stops him when he moves to strike Ophelia, but then she belittles her daughter for believing in magic, before throwing the smashed mandrake into the fire.
I love that scene, though, because the line from the mom is she's like, there is no magic in this world for, or she says something like, I know that there's no magic in this world for people like me. It's like this woman's been through so much hardship that to her, this, and I mean, she's dying right now, you know, and she's definitely realizing that she made a poor judgment call, you know, like being with this guy, and all of that's coming to a head. And then to see her daughter, you know, she's not seeing it for the sweet act it is of her daughter's desperately trying to save her mom's life because she loves her. And every time the daughter talks about the mom, it's the sweetest thing. It's like because at one point she's got her head on the mom's belly and she's like, can I just ask you one favor, brother? Like, please don't hurt her when you come out. When you see her, she's very pretty. And, you know, she says something like, you know, she's stern, but she really cares and stuff. And it's just like, that's so beautiful. But the mom can't see that she's going through so much and she has been through so much that she's like, magic is preposterous. It can't be magic because then why would I be so miserable right now if that were true? And she has no childlike wonder for the world because it's been like destroyed or her innocence has been destroyed like long ago. So I thought that scene it's so sad, but I totally know where the mom's coming from though.
Uh-huh. Carmen collapses, clutching her pregnant belly in agony. Carmen still might have survived her labor, except for what happens next. Dr. Ferrero delivers a lethal injection to a prisoner the captain had wanted to continue torturing. Knowing this act of mercy will get him killed, Ferrero sacrifices himself for a moral good. Vidal can't understand why the doctor wouldn't just obey. It would have been better for you. Ferrero replies, to obey just like that, for the sake of obeying without questioning, that's something only people like you can do, Captain.
I wrote, damn, that was so awesome. And it's, you know, he's going to die, but it's just like, you go. I was so happy for him. That was so sick. And then he gets to walk away with his head held high and gets shot. But
yes.
I love that he got to have like the last word.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So we've seen the cruelty of the captain with the capture of the two men who were actually just hunting rabbits.
Yeah. And he beats that one guy's face. I did not remember that scene. That was violent. Like he caves that guy's face in and it shows you all of it. It's crazy.
Yeah. And then he has captured a rebel who stutters. And so he humiliates him and he tortures him pretty badly. We don't see it, but we see the aftermath.
He's got a cut hand down the middle. Very similar.
He? Yeah. Does he really?
His hand was like cut in half, kind of.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I know that's not like anything symbolic here, but it is interesting that it happens both here and in men.
Oh my goodness. I did not realize that. I kind of like didn't want to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty horrible.
His hand has ballooned up, to an unnatural size. And so, yes, the doctor is merciful in giving him, he says, kill me.
Yeah.
And so the doctor does.
Because he didn't give away a name, but he said that there was like an insurgent in the camp. And I think he just feels so shameful over that too. He doesn't want to give anything else away.
Yes. Vidal knowingly sacrifices his wife in a fit of rage over Ferrero's disobedience. The paramedic who takes the doctor's place lacks the skill needed to save her. But, as Vidal had already told Ferrero, if you have to choose, save the baby.
Rough.
After Carmen's funeral, Vidal threatens Mercedes, revealing that he knows she's a spy. She tries to flee with Ophelia, but they don't get far. Vidal locks the girl in the attic while his men tie Mercedes up in the barn. In another act of defiance, Mercedes cuts a rope from her wrists and attacks Vidal, who's come to torture her. You won't be the first pig I've gutted, she says, before slashing his cheek in the style of Heath Ledger's Joker, physically reflecting his internal monstrosity.
Yeah, that scene is so. I remembered that. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot half of his face is cut open.
Oh, and then it's so nasty how he he
I couldn't
sews it
watch.
up himself.
Because actually, weirdly enough, well, I had to take out my nose ring for my surgery, and I've just been putting it in so that the hole won't close, but I haven't been able to put it in because it just requires bending it, and I'm just not. I just have to get a different ring, so I'm just trying to keep the hole open. But today I was like, oh, I'm gonna try to put it in again, and I just for some reason picked that moment when he was putting the stitches in, and I was like, you know what? I can't do this right now.
Mercedes escapes and gets caught again, but the rebels come to her rescue. Oh, that's a beautiful moment.
I love that scene.
Although she's reunited with her brother Pedro, Roger anyway, she must leave Ophelia behind for now. Ophelia, still locked away, is visited once more by the fawn. I've decided to give you one last chance, he says, before demanding fealty. You promise to listen, to do everything I tell you without question? Well,
And at one
Ophelia,
point, like, didn't Mercedes say, like, she heard that you shouldn't trust fawns?
yes, she did. Yeah, in the conversation about fairies.
Yeah. She's like, oh, I heard fawns were untrustworthy.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Ophelia nods, wide-eyed, hopeful, desperate. She follows his orders to bring her brother to the labyrinth, stealing him from Vidal's study, with the captain chasing her in a rage of pain from his throbbing face. And I think he's running in that same lurching way. The fawn, having hidden her away for a moment, tells her she must shed the blood of an innocent to open the portal. A pinprick, that's all. Just a drop of blood. It's the last task. Hurry.
But he's got that knife. So she's like, just a pinprick, huh?
When Ophelia refuses to harm her brother, the fawn shouts at her, astonished that she would sacrifice her sacred rights for this brat. But Ophelia holds to her convictions, even facing certain death, as the fawn, in his roundabout trickster way, has taught her to do. I don't know if I agree with that interpretation, but kind of, because they're reunited in the end. When Ophelia chooses to give up her claim to the throne and her mortal life to protect her brother, the fawn vanishes and Vidal finds her. He takes his son from her arms and shoots her.
That was so brutal. This guy is just such a piece of shit.
Yeah. In her final mortal moments, the veil is lifted as the king of the underworld tells Moana to rise and take her rightful place as princess. The fawn appears and congratulates her on passing the test by refusing to obey without question, refusing to commit wicked acts, and sacrificing herself to protect an innocent.
Okay, and now this is where I began to have maybe like my adult interpretation, and this part made me cry because I don't know what you think the ending is, but in my head I was like, none of this is real. Like,
yeah,
she's just a little girl who was caught up in an unfair world and killed mercilessly, and this is her way of escaping. There is no underworld that she's going to. That was my thought, was when I was watching this. I think as a kid I was like, oh, that's good that everything turned out good in the end. But this time I cried because I was like, nah, she's just lying there cold and dead, because then Mercedes happens upon her and is just sobbing. Like, you have this stark contrast between like her in the underworld and her mom is there, but she looks beautiful in this like regal gown holding the baby, and her dad is there and everybody's clapping for her and she's happy. And then, cuts to the moonlight on her like lifeless body. It's so sad.
I've yes. I mean, I totally get that interpretation. Are you interested to know what Guillermo del Toro said about it?
Yeah, I am interested. I still feel like my interpretation is a way to look at it, though. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's kind of interesting. I called these like two movies examples of magical realism. And I think this one is. I don't know. I think Men isn't. Men, I think some people have described it as a fairy tale, or, it has magic elements in it. I don't know what it is, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about how maybe these are all projections of, or in Men, that all the men were projections of how she viewed masculinity and men,
Mm-hmm.
though my argument is it would have been way more effective if they all looked like her ex-husband then. Because them just all looking like some random British guy, to me, doesn't make that message make sense. But if that's what we go with, I feel like that would make these in the same vein. Because I view this as her trying to escape, her horrible reality.
And that's definitely a valid interpretation. It makes all kinds of sense.
Especially because I love the ending narration, because it's really over the top. It's like, and then Moana lived. It basically is like she lived happily ever after and lived for centuries and everybody loved her. It's like exactly what that little girl would want to hear. Like, it's exactly what she wants to be true, but it's so over the top. But I love that it's over the top because it just feels childish.
Yeah.
And it's something she would like to think is true in her dying moments.
Yeah, and I mean, from an existential point of view, it absolutely makes sense. I mean, everybody wants their life to make sense, and it should be. We should live in a just world where when you do the right thing, you are rewarded, and actually, it makes the whole world, transforms the whole world.
Yeah,
and we know that that's not true. Mercedes knows it's not true, because even though the rebels win at the end and Vidal is killed, it's
not joyous.
It's not joyous. There's been so much pain. I mean, Franco was in power from 1936 to 1975.
That's like a lifetime.
Yeah. But Del Toro thinks it's real.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
that would be nice.
He points to the chalk, because there is a scene where
Vidal does see the chalk.
Vidal sees the chalk.
But I'm also like, what kid doesn't have chalk? Chalk's not magical.
That chalk is magical.
It is, but because she says it is. I know he made the movie, but
it's so funny. When I was in my 20s, I used to be like, the artist's, intention is trumps everything else, and it doesn't matter how things are interpreted, and you should like work to understand like what the artist says, and that's like the final word. And I've totally flipped on that. I really feel like that's part of it. But I feel like once you put art into the world, it's not really yours anymore.
And to follow exactly is exactly what this movie's telling us not to do.
Exactly. Oh, that's awesome, Mac. Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
No, I just love Del Toro, because
me too.
I love it that that's the message of this film. Question authority, defy authority, and I just love that, and I just wonder what it would be like for some of my students who are brought up in a totally different tradition. They're brought up to obey and to like not question, and and I just wonder how they would feel about this. One of the values I was brought up with is to not trust authority, and I'm really grateful for that.
I also like that in the end, there's the line of like, and they even said this in the beginning narration, but that, there were very few traces of her mortal life left over, and they were only seen by those who knew where to look. And I thought that was so sad, because, it is true of a child who dies. Like, and I mean, it's true of most people who die. Like, in 100 years, probably nobody's going to know who you were or think about you. And I don't necessarily think that that's sad, because I think that's just the truth. And I'm going to be dead anyway. So what do I care if people think about me? But I mean, I understand wanting to leave a mark behind on the world. But my point just being there's like a bajillion people here. Like not everyone's going to get the chance to do that. And if you live your life only wanting to do that, you probably will be disappointed. You should. And I don't think that's a bad thing, I guess, is what I'm saying is like, you can still have a good and happy life. But that was kind of like a melancholic and in a way bittersweet thing that like Mercedes will remember her for the rest of her life. But it's not presented as a sad thing, I guess, which I thought was nice. It's like, she's happy. Like Ophelia / Moana is happy in her life. And she does not mind that there's just like one flower that blooms that the camera focuses on. And that's fine.
We are just like these, I don't know, I don't want to get all like weird. But we don't,
a weird movie.
We don't really matter. I mean, we don't matter. Except in, I think, how we treat people. But in terms of like legacy, I mean, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
At all.
Same.
But I mean, also I've sort of been trying to just focus on what's right in front of me.
Yeah.
But that helps me a lot. If I get too far in the past or in the future, then things get real weird.
Yeah. But mentally. I think you're right that like every person that exists, like there's somebody else you've like had an effect on and you probably don't even know it.
Yeah. And that's kind of cool in a way. Like, well, I just want to, I might cut this out, but, being a member of like a couple 12-step programs, that's like part of the deal. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to be available so that you can help people. And I remember a friend of mine once said, and he did a lot. I mean, he did a lot of things.
I think about him a lot, actually.
Do you?
Yeah. Well, because, and again, like,
that's incredible.
Cut this out, but like, it was a very important formative thing, I feel like, for me to know him because I thought he was so nice and I liked him so much. But then I remember you telling me that he had unfortunately like killed someone through drunk driving. And that really affected me because I was like, I felt bad for him, like I felt bad for the person who died too, but that I was like, this is a really nice guy. Like, and he's he's really trying. And so there is like, you can do something that's really horrible, but like, I do feel like redemption is a thing that is real and should be available to, like, he can't just go away after doing something like that, like right. That's not the right answer. And how beautiful it is that he was able to, I mean, at least on the outside, looked like he was really turning his life around, So I thought that was really, I think about him all the time, actually.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. I actually want to leave that in.
Maybe cut his name out. We don't have to like say his name.
Yeah, I need to find like a beep sound effect. But anyway, but what he said was, and he did a lot of stuff like intentionally to try to help people. Like he offered rides and he told his story a lot, and he just did a number of things. And he said, but the way it's probably going to go is one of the pamphlets that I carry around in my truck is going to fall out on the side of the road and somebody's going to like, get sober because of that pamphlet. It will have nothing to do with what I'm trying to do. But
that would still be a thing that you did, that would still be an effect. Like, okay, even today I went to the pharmacy and I always go to the same pharmacy simply because it is right across the street. But I hate this pharmacy because, and listen, if you're a pharmacy tech, I literally look on forums to see why every pharmacy I go to, everyone seems like the meanest person on the planet, which is so unfortunate because I'm getting anxiety meds. So it's kind of like I'm a person who I don't particularly like talking to people who seem like they wish I would go fuck off and die. But that's literally almost every pharmacist I've ever talked to. It's been like, I wish you weren't here. Like that's like the vibe I get from them because it seems like it's a hard job and they don't get the support they need. Okay. But when I went, there's one woman who works at the pharmacy who I do like because she's really sweet. She really goes above and beyond. She has a stutter and she really does not let that like get her down. You know, she talks on the phone. I have issues talking on the phone, and I love her. But when I went, there's another woman who I always see working there who's always got the most foul attitude you've ever seen. And the woman I like, let's call her A, was talking to mean woman B and was saying like A seems like she's the like head pharmacist, B's a tech. And she was saying, there's people in line. Can you go help them? And B turns to another woman next to her, like rolls her eyes. I can see all of this and like says something, not even under her breath, like about the other woman and was so rude and was just like, well, they have a question and I can't answer it. So no, I can't help them. And so then Ms. A walks over to me and helps me and was just so nice. And I just tried in all of my power to be like, thank you so much for your help. Like, you know, I was trying to be really nice to her. And even she probably, I left her memory as soon as, you know, she turned away and went to work on something else. But it's like, she's sticking in my mind of like, well, you're the only nice pharmacy tech I've like ever met. It hurts me that it seems like you're getting bullied at your job. And I even thought about calling like the CVS higher. Like, I don't want to fuck with anyone's like livelihood, but I was like, this woman seems like a nightmare to work with. This other woman, like,
Yeah.
she was belittling her to her face and like, this woman's like seems like she's her boss. But it doesn't seem like the woman who's getting belittled has like the confidence to like say like, hey, shut the fuck up, do your job, you know, and don't be a fucking asshole. So even that woman is in my thoughts like all the time, you know, and every time I'm happy when it's her working. So it's like, I guess all that to say, if you put good out into the world, I swear there's somebody who notices it and they think about you.
That's a really good point. And yeah, I mean, it's so weird. Like sometimes students I do not know that well because they like never talk up in class or, you know, whatever, will like come back like on the last day of class and be like, you're my favorite teacher. Aww. This was my favorite class, you know, and it's just like, I had no idea. And I really always like love like certain students every semester, and we're getting toward the end. And so I'm just like, I want to do something, but I don't want to like be like, I love you, but I don't really love you, you know?
Yeah.
So what I usually do is I go on Canva and I make like a silly like certificate and then I just email it to them. And I'm
That's
like,
really sweet.
You can't, you know, redeem this for like, you know, points or anything, but I just, you know, whatever. So I think I am going to do that.
That's really, that would have made my whole life if I got that.
And also, I think one of the things that I've been trying to do, and I'm sort of taking it on as like, I'm 55, I'm already like considered to be like ancient. So why not just be like fucking weird? You know, there was this really, really heavy woman the other day in a doctor's office where I was, and I loved the way she looked. And as I got closer to her, she had skulls all over this like black baby doll dress. Ooh. And I said, I love your dress. And she was like, oh my God, thank you. And I'm like, you look amazing. And she did. She looked amazing. I never had the confidence to do that. And I don't really have it right now. But I think I'm going to try to do it more because I don't know, always makes me feel good when somebody says something to me. So
I think, it is a nice way to just inject some niceness into the world. Like, and I think some people might even be like bad at showing that they appreciate it, but I think everybody does. Like, I think I can be kind of awkward in public because I'm always like, I'm in like survival mode of just like, let me end this as soon as possible and get back to my cave. But even when I always hope people understand, like, and I think they do, but
I think so.
People appreciate it no matter what. I think.
Right. Yeah.
As long as you're not being creepy.
Well,
which I know you're not being, but like, I guess that is to say, everybody, WoHos, that's not carte blanche to like, just be weird to people.
And move on.
Be like, I love that shirt.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's always, yeah. And move on. Cause this is a little bit off topic, but when I was a girl, I had a lot of issues with like I worked at a restaurant and I had a coworker who was like just straight up harassing me. He was the worst. And it really struck me because when he complimented me, it was like snakes slithering, just like the worst feeling. But I had another male coworker who, when he would compliment me, no feelings like that. It would just, and it's not about attractiveness, what they look like or anything. It was truly like delivery and what they were saying. It's like creepy guy who had a girlfriend, by the way, would be like I was the host and sometimes people would just walk by without even saying anything to me, which was okay. And he would come up and be like, I just find it so weird that somebody would walk by and not, say hi to such a beautiful girl like yourself. Like, and it's just like, like disgusting. Meanwhile, the other guy would just be like, you look really nice today. I really like that dress. Perfect. That's all you got to do, guys.
Yeah.
Don't be like, you look ravishing. I don't know why. Like,
ravishing.
He was the worst. And I even complained about him. What did my horrible boss do? Told him to his face the same day we were working together. So then he came up to me and was like, I was so sorry to hear that. I'm making you uncomfortable. I'm like, well, it's continuing right now. I've gotten us way off topic.
I have a couple bits of trivia. Guillermo del Toro is famous for compiling books of notes and drawings about his ideas before turning them into films, something he regards as essential to the process. He left years' worth of notes for this film in the back of a cab, and when he discovered them missing, he thought it was the end of the project. However, the cab driver found them and, realizing their importance, tracked him down and returned them at great personal difficulty and expense. Del Toro was convinced that this was a blessing, and it made him ever more determined to complete the film.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
That is so beautiful.
Stephen King attended a screening of the film and sat next to Guillermo del Toro. According to del Toro, King squirmed when the pale man chased Ophelia. Del Toro compared the experience of seeing King's reaction to winning an Oscar, which he eventually did with The Shape of Water.
Aww. Good for he is just the best. I love Guillermo del Toro.
I do too.
And also Doug Jones played the Fishman.
That's right. The captain's room is made to look like the inside of his father's watch, which Guillermo del Toro says represents his troubled mind. Oh gosh. According to the director's commentary, the actor Manolo Solo was nearly killed when one of the horses fell on top of him.
New fear unlocked.
No doubt.
Oh my God.
Horses are already super scary.
They're just so big.
They're so big.
They're so big.
Their eyes are big.
Their
Everything's
teeth are big.
Ugh.
And it's just the fact that they could even not be trying to kill you and they'll kill you.
Yeah.
Like they don't mean to.
Well, maybe they do though.
But if they fall on you, they don't want to be falling either.
Oh, Mac. I picked this one for you. The pale man's eyes on his hands is a feature shared by the Japanese mythological monster, the Tanome. Tanome translates to hands, eyes, or eyes of the hands.
Interesting. I actually knew that te meant hands and me meant eyes. I'm proud of myself. Well, WoHos, you should know I'm starting a Japanese course soon, and I'm very excited about it.
And because I want to be like my son, not completely exactly like my son, but I like to follow in his footsteps, I am taking a Korean course online.
Yay! We'll be unstoppable.
Yeah, for sure.
in 2 countries.
Audiences have interpreted the film's bittersweet ending as everything from a religious metaphor to a psychological allegory. Guillermo del Toro has said, "I always think of that beautiful quote by Søren Kierkegaard, which says the tyrant's reign ends with his death, but the martyr's reign starts with his death." I think that is the essence of the movie. It's about living forever by choosing how you die.
Which Vidal says multiple times. Like he says, you know, if there's a good way to die, it's this. Like he always says that in battle, which is such a wild concept. I know people have to think that way if they're in like war situations because it makes you feel less freaked out maybe about the fact that you could die violently. But the whole like warrior's death is so foreign to me because I mean, I'm not in a wartime, which is only by luck that I was born now in this country at this time. But I don't know. I don't think if a war ever started and I was drafted, you could not convince me that would be a glorious way to die.
Well, guess what I forgot to do for
the Letterboxd?
Yeah. So I'm just going to take the 3 first worst reviews that I find. Because if you don't like this film, I don't know what to tell you.
What's wrong with you?
There's something deeply wrong with you. There's no other explanation. It's objectively wonderful.
It is beautiful. It's a work of art.
It is. It's a complete masterpiece. And so if you don't like it, I don't think we can be friends anymore. I mean, we can be friends if you like men and we don't, but if you don't like Pan's Labyrinth at all,
so if you don't like it, maybe you should rewatch.
Actually, you know what? Quinn texted me and she was like, "I don't love it, and I know that's a sin." And I wrote back, "It is." And then she wrote back, "Ha ha 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 ha. I'm not laughing, Quinn." Okay. All right. Barack69 gave it a 0.5 star. "I wanted monsters. This movie sucks."
Okay.
Okay, and I don't understand reviews like this. Anga4 gave it a 0.5 star. "Childhood trauma."
Yeah.
How is that the fucking film's fault?
Yeah.
That you were not supervised and you saw something at an inappropriate age.
Yeah.
That's not a review.
I'll give a review to that review. 0.5 star. Stupid review.
This is stupid, but maybe someone will like it. 0.5 star from Franz. "Where's Bowie?" All right. Well,
boo.
I didn't get to say or did I? Dendrophobia is the fear of trees. I think that
was in Men.
That was in Men. Okay. So, I do have one. Rhinidophobia is an intense, irrational fear of frogs and toads.
Oh, unfortunate to have that fear. I think toads and frogs are really cool.
Me too.
I wouldn't want to touch one, but they're definitely cool.
Oh, they're so cool. All right. How would we rate it?
Eyeballs.
Of course. 5 eyeballs?
4.5.
4.5, yeah.
I think I have to take off a 0.5 star just for the banquet scene because it took me out of it. Uh-huh. I was so wrapped up in everything, and then that just took me out. But that's just one very small thing.
Yes.
Other than that, it's perfect.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 5. I think
that's fair.
I think it's wonderful.
It's a great movie.
What have we learned?
Don't do things just because a fascist tells you to.
Yeah. Fuck the fascists.
Truly. And I mean, that's kind of, yeah.
Would we watch it again?
Yes.
Of course. And do you have a favorite scene?
I love any scene with the fawn. He's my favorite character. I think he looks so cool, and I loved his voice. I thought he was amazing. I love the scene where she shows the bug, the fairy in the book, and then it turns into a fairy.
Yes.
I love, and just the idea that this little girl would call that, like, I don't even know what kind of bug that is, but it looked like a weird mix between like a grasshopper and like a praying mantis, that she would think that that's a fairy delighted me so much.
Yes.
Like the imagination was like that. That was all you needed to do to show me what kind of imagination this girl has. And I just felt like it was just like, mwah, like beautiful storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly. If there's a thing that kids have where they haven't yet learned what's good and bad in the world. I was thinking about this the other day. I used to love earthworms. I know.
But they're cool.
They are cool. I mean,
Yeah.
they're really cool. But I'm not that into them anymore. But I just remember as a kid just thinking, like, they're so cool.
You're right.
Who wins the You Fool Award?
Vidal.
Captain Vidal.
Yeah, come on.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mac, for having this conversation with me today about Pan's Labyrinth.
Happy to do it.
And thank you, WoHos, for joining us for this episode and for all your support. It means the world of horror to us, truly. Next time, we're going to be looking at movies about stalkers with Single White Female from the US and The Cry of the Owl from Canada, which is truly bonkers.
I haven't seen it yet.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please tell all your friends all about us. Remember, WoHos, we love you, and don't go into the basement.